Hi, my name is Peter Cuthbert. I'm President and Global Head of Real Estate for Fiera Real Estate. Fiera Real Estate is owned by Fiera Capital, which is a public company. They currently have 158 million in assets under management, and we are the real estate platform within that group. I think with respect to what's different with this COVID-led crisis and other ones that I've been through, 35 years in the real estate business, with just the catalyst itself. So it's unusual to have a health issue lead an economic downturn, and the suddenness of the shift is different. So the rapidity of the onset of this and the reaction from the market, particularly in places like the retail sector, were sudden and sharp, and we had to react and respond very quickly. Adding onto that, we had government programs and interventions that we had to manage, and they created a very, very large administrative load. So it's, in a typical downturn, you'd have time to react, and you would have a sort of a gradual progression of difficulty. Here it was acute. So that's the difference. But the basic impacts are very similar. So the things that have been impacted in real estate, rental collections, occupancy levels, financial distress for those who are overgeared or overlevered, have been exactly the same. And so, having been through cycles in the past, the solutions are well known to us, and so we're not relaxed about it all, but we're prepared to deal with it. I think lessons learned: mark-to-market counts when you're running open pooled funds, so you need to have your NAV in the correct position so that the fund will operate properly. Open funds, if the NAV's accurate, the fund will in effect self-regulate. So by that I mean when you move in sync with the market, it takes the pressure off your investors to rebalance or reposition against other asset classes. And so by doing that, you de-stress the situation. Debt kills. So if you're over-levered in a downturn, it really becomes problematic, and that's usually where the problem starts. So we tend to be, in our conservative core funds, we tend to be low-levered strategies, which keeps us in strong positive cash flow position. Location continues through all cycles to reign supreme. So if you have strong locations next to long-term infrastructure, highways, intermodal yards, services, it will sustain you through the downturn. It will put you in a position, provided you're not over-levered, to compete for market share, and you tend to do relatively better through the cycle. Our investment strategies are designed to be flexible and nimble, reacting to market changes. So we're always seeking demand, supply, and balance, and looking for market dislocation, undercapitalized assets, and financial distress. So those have always featured in our strategies, and they continue to be one of the things that we look for. So we see this as an opportunistic time, and it's really just an opportunity to continue with our strategies and take advantage of that dislocation in the market. We use proprietary risk management and portfolio construction tools to direct our strategy. So for instance, pre-pandemic, we went into a relative overweight on industrial, and we also happened to be one of the first groups to go into the industrial market in Montreal, sort of just before it started to take a turn for the better on the economic front. We saw, cheap labor, cheap energy, a renewed sense of transparency in the political landscape, and we felt that would drive capital flows. And we felt that the industrial market was undersupplied in Montreal. So all of those tools we use in our strategies, and they work really well regardless of where we are in the cycle. So strategies don't change significantly in terms of our investment program, but what may change is exactly what type of built form we look at. Capital flows, capital commitments that we had remain in place. They're substantive. Our investors are showing discipline and patience. We just haven't had any redemption activity, and our closed-ended funds are closed, so they're locked down. So the capital stays in place. We have had inbound requests, so we have people that are looking at a repriced market and looking to come back into the market or enter for the first time, and so we're fielding those inquiries now and working through subscription agreements to get them set up for probably later in the year, once we've had the proper and hopefully full repricing of the net asset values in the funds. We get asked this question a lot. What are the differences between the UK and Canada? This crisis has impacted every major economy in the world and all of the Western economies. So there's nothing particularly unique or different about what's happening in the UK. If you use rental collections as a barometer, our experience on rental collections is very, very similar in the UK versus Canada. Our range of strategies are very similar as well. So we do everything from core or income through to opportunistic. So the experience is very similar. The sectors that are getting hit are very similar. So your hospitality, leisure, those types of services are being impacted more heavily. What we're finding is, distress is hitting the over-levered businesses and the over-levered landlords first and early, creating lots of dislocation. Concerns about unemployment and the leisure and hospitality business continue to reign over there, just as they do here. And I think, so the only real difference is the COVID numbers are a little worse in the UK, and they're a little bit behind us in terms of loosening restrictions around mobility and opening up, particularly in the London area, which is, UK is very London-centric. Our core strategies, our income strategies, were well positioned heading into the crisis and generally positioned to operate effectively in a downturn, regardless of the cause. So by definition, those strategies that we run on the income side are conservative. They don't have a lot of leverage in them, so low loan to value, and positioned to weather the storm, regardless of what the creation of the downturn is. So our portfolios are diversified, they're low levered, they have strong locations, highly functional and adaptable buildings. We don't have a lot of special purpose assets, so those would be assets like retirement homes or hotels or resort properties, things like that. And we have a very little high order retail or enclosed retail. So from our standpoint, those portfolios are very well positioned, and they already are showing early returns that they're performing relatively well. In terms of asset classes that will come out well, it's really just a continuation of trends that we saw pre-COVID. So, retail was already suffering because of the change in the supply chain and online retailing and a move to omni-channel retailing. So smaller bricks and mortar presence and more online presence. Still a mix, there's still a need. So we see that group doing well. Not doing so well, but the industrial should do very well, and residential should perform reasonably well as well. Office, downtown CBD office that's transit-centric or mass transit-centric may struggle, at least in the near term, until there's a good solution for the disease, just because people really do not want to get into a crowded transit vehicle and head downtown, and that's problematic. So with that in mind, we think possibly more structurally, but at least in the near term, suburban office might play a little more strongly because people can get in, I call them their personal isolation pods now, their cars, and drive up to the door of the office building and walk in. For every month of shutdown, you'll find there's a 1x factor of months of recovery. So it's not a direct relationship. So if you got 1 month of shutdown, it's like, 1.6 months of recovery or whatever that factor might end up being. But that is something that we're concerned about. The longer we stay shut, the greater the extension of the recovery. Culture is very important in our program, and we think it has a significant impact on our success. The way that we have positioned this, and I think this is to us it's obvious, and I think to our team it's obvious, but opportunity is born of crisis. So we have positioned this as a career building opportunity. Your ability to overcome the unique circumstances, your ability to stay focused, productive, and engaged even while you're working from home in a different type of scenario, is resume building. If you perform through this, this will be the defining moment in your career. Just as perhaps in my career, being engaged and performing in the early 90s when there was a major real estate correction, a lot of people were losing their jobs. If you stayed focused and were determined to learn and grow, you did very well coming out of that. So when you talk about culture and engagement and how do you get people motivated, well, we talk a lot about what the opportunity is and how you turn this around and move in a more positive direction. We're using online social events and quizzes and challenges and things like that to keep us together to some degree. And we've maintained all of our usual meetings and connectivity through the screens. But everybody wants to get back together, so it'd be nice to be back together and start living a full sensory life instead of a 2D life. So, but that's sort of the things that we're thinking about, and that's how we're positioning it. We're continuously working on our strategy and evolving our strategy, because the world's not static. So you're always looking inward and trying to figure out how to be better, how to innovate, how to create, and how to anticipate what's coming the best you can. So I think what we're faced with is organizations they're already, these factors we're featuring large, but successful organizations will be nimble, flexible, able to shift on a dime to changing circumstance and priorities, highly creative, and ideally low ego. And I think high ego is low creativity. And so the successful organizations will be nimble and flexible and creative and be able to adapt. In terms of real estate investment, I think there's a new hierarchy of priorities, which I was just touching on. Health and safety will rise to the very top. So when you're entertaining a tenant or a tenant's entertaining their choice, they are going to be asking about air handling systems, filter systems, your sanitation schedules, equipment, tools. They might even get as deep as what brands are you using? How do we know you're sterilizing everything the way you should? Elevator or vertical transportation technologies are going to become more important in terms of managing your traffic up and down those stacks. It's important for us to take an even, measured approach to what's before us and to collectively view it as not worse, not necessarily better, just different. And that we encourage our younger generations to really take advantage of this opportunity to grow, innovate, create, and also make an impact. Take advantage of some of the things that are happening and really drive them home structurally in society. My hope is that we arrive in a much different societal construct where it's more inclusive, it's a little kinder and gentler, it's not quite as self-absorbed, and our younger generations will have a great place from which to grow coming out of this, and they'll have learned a lot of lessons.